I'm John, and tonight I want answers about Christopher Ward.
Really?
I'm John Thompson.
I'm John A. Vink.
I'm Keith Stattenfield.
I'm Loretta Beavers.
I'm AJ Minnick.
I'm Jennifer Sim.
I'm Jim too.
I'm Bobby Chastain. These stories tonight on John Wants Answers.
John wants answers. John wants answers. Give John answers. Give John answers. John wants answers. John wants answers. Give John answers now.
All right, today I'm very excited. I have on the show Christopher Ward. Now, Christopher Ward is a songwriter, musician, author, television presenter, and podcast host.
Woohoo!
Hi, Christopher, and welcome to the show.
Hello, John. Thank you for having me.
Now, of all those titles I listed, which one do you identify with the most?
Depends which day it is. On Thursdays, I'm a songwriter. Fridays, I kind of slip into being a television guest occasionally. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Now, most Canadians of my generation will recognize you as one of the first VJ on MuchMusic. And then my American friends ask me, what's MuchMusic? And I guess a very simple answer would be the Canadian MTV.
Yeah.
Like, how would you contrast MTV and MuchMusic?
They were, considering that they sort of sprang from the same notion, I mean, they're actually pretty dramatically different animals. MTV, when it started, was pretty buttoned down. You know, it was just like a host in a little box, kind of all the throws were pre-recorded, and, you know, they assembled the shows afterwards. Much was loose and live and wacky and totally seat of the pants television. And it was kind of like watching improv comedy where you know the people are going to screw up and that it's all going to fall apart, but that's the fun. Right. That's sort of the spirit of Much.
You wrote a book about it, and I have it right here. Is this live? And I guess the answer is yes. MuchMusic was pretty much live the whole time. This is a fascinating book, especially for someone like me who lived through the MuchMusic years. Talks about the start of the station, you know, how it came along, the shows, the other VJs, the guests you had on, the artists. Really great book.
Thank you very much. You know, one thing, you credited me with being Canada's first VJ, which is more or less true, but there were actually two of us. The other one was a gentleman who went at the time by the name of J.D. Roberts, whose name is John Roberts. He's not on the Supreme Court, I would clarify that. But he is the White House, what is he called? Chief correspondent, I think, for Fox News. So you will see John in the scrum asking questions of Donald Trump when he gets an opportunity. So
now for a period of like 6 months, it was just you and J.D. Roberts. Were the only
that was it. It was pretty exhausting, but I think, you know, we were running on pure, you know, caffeine and adrenaline at that point because it was so brand new and exciting, and yeah, it was live every day.
And so how many hours did you work, or were you on air a day at that time?
I think we were doing 4-hour shifts in those days. So together we'd do 8 hours, and then it would be repeated 3 times. So
now, even before MuchMusic started, you were working on, I guess, the prototype for MuchMusic, a show called City Limits.
Yeah, it was an all-night video show. Went from midnight till 6 in the morning on the weekends. And then it was exactly set up that way, that they wanted it to be a prototype, because in Canada, you have to do this big presentation before the Canadian Radio Television Commission in order to try to get a license for a cable channel and all that. And they knew that they needed to have it all pretty buttoned down, and that was their way of doing so. So we didn't know that at the time, that that's what they were doing, but yeah.
Oh, so you got almost tricked into it.
Pretty much, yeah. I was duped for my entire career, John. It was kind of like how you got me to do this show, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
You said there'd be candy, and I fell for it.
It's in the mail. So City Limits is also like a live show, and
Yes, as live as you could ever get.
and you played music videos.
Yeah, we played music videos, and I had just finished a stretch at Second City, the comedy troupe.
Mm-hmm.
And so my friends who were in the company with me in the Second City touring company would come down and do wacky bits on my show, which was great because I needed all the help I could get.
Right, filling 6 hours, a night sounds like a big task.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of music videos, but what happened is inevitably we got bored, and then it was like, well, what can we do tonight just to completely mess with this? So we we could go on the roof, while we could go in the street, yeah. So we just did whatever came up.
I guess near the end, like around 5 a.m., you have to be wondering if anyone's watching.
No, we were pretty convinced that nobody was watching at that point, which actually, unfortunately, gave us license to do even stupider things than we normally would.
Now, the great thing about City Limits, legendary, is it's the start of Wayne Campbell, the character from Mike Myers. Wayne's World, right?
Yeah, Mike and I were in Second City together, and he had done the Wayne character on stage at Second City. And so I said, you got to do Wayne, come down to the show. So he played my cousin Wayne, who would be the great interrupter. He would come in and mess with the show, and he'd come in the middle of interviews and just totally screw with people. And yeah, it was fantastic.
Now, after MuchMusic started, did City Limits continue to go on?
There was a version of it. Yeah, it sort of became the alternative show at Much. So the name was maintained, but it was quite a different animal at that point.
MuchMusic, when it started, there's a rule in Canada for broadcasters called CanCon. Now, what is CanCon?
This must be so bizarre to Americans. It's like, there's a rule that says you have to play one-third Canadian music, but why? Well, the answer is this. The, American culture looms large in Canada as it does elsewhere around the world. And the scrappy little upstarts in Canada kind of needed all the help they could get. We didn't really have that much of an industry when I think about it, when Much started. There were a few bands that had started to break out. But yeah, it depended on that extra little boost of people having to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. MuchMusic did a great job of promoting Canadian acts and nurturing them through their careers. Now that was great for me because I lived in a small town, British Columbia, and the nearest city was Spokane, Washington.
Right.
So even though we had our own local station, they played music for our parents. So all the teenagers listened to all the radio stations from Spokane. And of course, those would have, no Canadian content on them, unless, they're a big breakout artists like maybe Bryan Adams or something.
Yeah.
So we were left with the video shows, was where we got all our Canadian music from. So CBC had a couple of shows, Good Rockin' Tonight.
Right.
But then you had MuchMusic, which is playing, music all the time. And I don't think we would have, known of a lot of Canadian artists where we lived, unless it was, MuchMusic.
Well, I think, we kind of took that as our mandate because those people, the Canadian artists, I mean, they were our friends. I mean, we wanted to boost their careers, and we found that we could make a huge difference in a really short period of time. When I count the number of bands that, we started playing their video, especially if it was in a fairly high rotation. I mean, I've talked to people in bands like Glass Tiger and Honeymoon Suite from that era, and artists like Jan Arden, and they'll say, my career was one thing, and then the day that MuchMusic started playing, I playing my video, I couldn't go to the grocery store anymore.
Mhm.
So, but that's a good thing, right?
Depends who you ask. Right? Now I remember I'd moved to Toronto at this point, and Bare Naked Ladies.
Yeah.
They broke out, from what I can tell, for two different reasons. One was they were scheduled to appear at a concert in front of City Hall, and the city of Toronto threw them off the lineup, saying your name, Bare Naked Ladies, is too offensive. We couldn't have
Wow.
it. And so there was a big uproar over that.
Oh.
But the other thing that made them break was they all packed into Speaker's Corner and
Yeah.
basically performed a music video. Now, for those who don't know what Speaker's Corner is, what can you tell us about that?
Well, imagine that it's like a recording studio in a phone booth.
Mhm.
So you go in and you put in $1 or a loonie, as we refer to it in Canada,
Uh-huh.
and then you have, I think, is it 60 seconds or 90 seconds to record whatever you want to record. And it was free and it was open all the time, and just everybody and their mother would go in there. I mean, half the time it was, people who were drunk or people who were complaining about, parking restrictions or
So there were a
whatever.
lot of
But
bars on Queen Street, which would, bring in the drunk people.
yeah, there was plenty of opportunities for drunk people to be on Speaker's Corner. But in this case, what the ladies did, which was fantastic, is they had a gig coming up, and it was their biggest gig to date. It was at a pretty large venue for them, and they were like, well, what are we going to do to promote this thing? How are we going to get like a pretty good audience? So they wrote a song that captured the details of the gig. It literally said, the Bare Naked Ladies is playing at such and such a venue on such and such a date at such and such a time, and here's the price of a ticket. And they fitted it all in, they made it rhyme. And then what happened is that the producers at Much saw it and went, this is fantastic, and started playing it all the time. So they had a full house, and it literally was kind of the beginnings of their career.
Did they also do like a version of Be My Yoko Ono, I think?
Oh, maybe. You know what, John? I don't know about that. Probably.
Did MuchMusic end up producing like some of their first music videos?
MuchMusic never produced music videos. I'm sure there were occasions when Much had shot concert footage of artists, and they used that footage in order to incorporate it into a video. There was a fund, and it was called Factor, and it was the Fund to Assist Canadian Talent on Record. Whew, how about that, huh? And there was a video version of it called Video Fact. And I think what happened is people would make submissions, like bands would make submissions to this fund, and then there would be like a meeting, and all these people would get together who were in the music industry, and they would look at all these proposals, and then they would go, well, we really like this one, and they would fund them, and that would help people get their first videos going. Pretty cool idea. But again, it springs from that same thing of the Canadian music industry and the video industry correctly feeling like, wow, we got to help these little local artists here because they're not going to be able to do it on their own.
Right. Now you yourself are a musician. You had like 3 albums. Do you ever play one of your videos on MuchMusic?
There was one that got played. It was a little weird, but yeah, it did get played. It was called Boys and Girls.
Well, if you keep looking at this monitor right here, you're going to see it appear at some point.
Oh, okay. All right.
I guess congratulations.
Well, how did it look?
It looked about as good as you remember it.
What a slippery answer that was, John. I got to say, that was nicely done. Yeah, well played.
But congratulations are in order because you were nominated for 1987 Juno for that, Most Promising Male Vocalist.
Well, that's kind of a belated congratulations, isn't it? Get with the program. It's like 37 years ago.
I haven't seen you since then.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm going to make another record.
Oh, good.
I know it's Ward's folly to be thinking about making a record in this day and age, because people don't buy vinyl. I think maybe I'll just do it like vinyl and just make like 200 copies of it, limited edition, give it to my friends, and call it a day. But I'm going to do that starting next week. That's why I'm in Toronto.
So you have 3 albums out in the past. Are those available anywhere to purchase?
If you haunt some of the more obscure secondhand record stores, like third-hand, fourth-hand record stores, you might find a copy.
Okay, but there's nothing on iTunes or Spotify?
No, and Warner never digitized it or the other stuff, so no. It hardly exists at all at this point.
Well, I did find some of the songs from Spark of Desire on YouTube. So if you search on YouTube,
great. I mean, when you can't find anything anywhere else, you go, just check on YouTube, and sure enough, 4 hours later, you've lost your entire evening, right?
Right. MuchMusic, it's not really still around today anymore, is it?
Yes, it is. I have to confess I haven't watched it for a while because I live in California. But it's a different thing than it used to be, that's for sure, but it still exists.
Now I believe it's called Much, and they took off the music part, and they don't actually play music anymore on this station.
Yeah, they still have artists on. I mean, I think, and they, I don't know whether they do concerts, but they have the MuchMusic Video Awards every year, which is a pretty big show.
What do you think contributed to the decline of music video stations?
Well, speaking of YouTube, people, they used to call it appointment viewing, right? When like your favorite TV show would come up Thursday at 8 p.m. So that's when you would plunk yourself in front of the TV. And people similarly on MuchMusic, they'd be waiting for their favorite music video to come on. But now, you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want. So why would you sit and wait for it to happen, right? If you want to see Beyonce's new video, you just go to YouTube or Yahoo or wherever you want, and there it is. So I think that's it. It's just, it's an on-demand culture now, which is different than what it used to be.
I guess what I would miss then is, in the old days, you would watch MuchMusic to see new music that you haven't heard before, or just get, exposed to various things. And with the on-demand, you don't get that. You see the songs you like, and you don't get presented with something new.
I think actually you just made a really, really good point about what is lost in the, the evolution, whatever you want to call it, of popular culture. Now, I guess if people want to hear new music, there's recommendations on the streaming services based on what you already like, so there's an opportunity that way. Is that how you think people mostly hear new music now?
If they stop to listen to the radio, maybe, or suggestions on the online services.
Yeah.
Which I don't do very often. Like, I'll play video on MuchMusic or on YouTube. Yeah. And then it'll be recommendations, and I'll pick a recommendation that I already know, usually.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I love listening to new music. I'm still pretty curious about what's going on. So I will go, it's like every couple of months, I'll have an entire evening of just chasing down rabbit holes of new music. And, you can go to Pitchfork, or you can go to, some of the NPR outlets like KCRW in LA has like great suggestions. And, you can, if you're really curious and persistent, you can find new music, but you kind of have to go looking for it, I think.
So I was listening to MuchMusic in 1989 in my small town. I discovered an artist named Alana Miles.
Yeah.
And I went out and I bought her a cassette This is the
Oh
application
my
I bought
goodness.
30 some years ago.
Wow.
That's a big deal. That's like $10. So
Is that how much it was at the time?
I think so. So as a teenager, to invest in a whole album was big money.
That's, yeah. And were you satisfied with your purchase?
Very much. So
You're not, in other words, you're not coming to me looking for a refund.
I'm not looking for a refund, no.
Yeah.
So what was great is, you know, I'd be on the bus to go to school. So I take out my Walkman and I take out the Atlanta Miles cassette. And then a girl on the bus would point and be like, that's a good one. So right away I got street cred, or I guess in this case I would get bus cred. And I would pop it in and listen to it. Now I got a 20-minute bus ride. So what you can't do today, what you could do back then, is like read the liner notes. So I remember taking out the little sleeve.
Yeah, I miss the liner notes because I'm a bit of an info maniac myself. But it sounds like you were using Alana's record to get girls.
Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that would get me girls. I would have, you know, gotten more of her cassettes.
I don't know. I think you're maybe craftier about this than you're letting on, John. I'm suspicious. Let me put it that way.
So I'm reading the liner notes and I'm seeing like the songwriters of all these songs. He's like, you know, C. Ward, you know, C. Ward. And then I look and it says executive producer, Christopher Ward. I'm like, hey, that's the guy from MuchMusic.
You made the connection, yeah.
And there's even Alana's address in here. I could send her a letter, which I actually think I did once.
Did you ever hear back?
I got a response saying, here's an application to join Alana's fan club. I think it's the response I got. Which is, you know, definitely
better than a kick in the pants, right?
And then you got the benefit of selling the album twice because you had to buy it on CD later. So
yes, that was a good thing.
A good time. Now, Americans will all remember Alana Miles from her hit, you know, Black Velvet. It went to #1 for a few weeks, and she won a Grammy for Best Rock Performance on that.
Yeah.
Now, she's not quite a one-hit wonder because Love Is hit number 36. So it just cracked the top 40.
Okay.
So
I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Now, what I've heard is that another artist, Robin Lee, put out Black Velvet as well, like around the same time.
Yeah, that was the brainchild of Atlantic Records, where Alana was signed. And similarly, Robin Lee was signed to Atlantic in Nashville. And I think they felt like, well, this is a perfect song to also be pitched to the country market. So the version that she did, that Robin Lee did, was remarkably similar to Alana's version. I think there was maybe a little bit, there's like a grand piano in it or something, but there's a couple of little differences in terms of the instrumentation, but otherwise it was kind of letter perfect. And they even kind of copied the video too. It was a little weird.
I watched the video on YouTube and I was amazed, like Robin Lee even looked like Alana in the video. Pretty similar.
Yeah, you can classify that as weird for sure.
Did she start working on her album before Alana's album came out? Like, how would she have known about the Black Velvet song?
Well, I think it was the record company guy pitched it to her and said, you know, we'll get behind this if you do this version of this song. I mean, it was probably something, I'm assuming, I don't know what the, you know, behind the scenes conversation was, but because she was signed to the same label, and it came out fairly shortly thereafter. It wasn't out before Alana's version by any means, but because she wouldn't have heard the song.
Mm-hmm. Did Black Velvet become a hit in Canada before it was a hit in the USA?
You know what? It was a bigger hit in the US.
Bigger hit?
Yeah. The first single in Canada was Love Is. You know, we were pretty excited when the album came out, and Love Is, and then Much was playing the video. And I remember the moment when I knew that we really had something going on here. And I was working late at MuchMusic in one of the editing rooms, working on some special or something. And I came out, at like 2 a.m. or whatever. So the bars were letting out or had already let out. And there was a guy rolling down Queen Street in front of Much, loaded, just plastered, like barely able to keep his balance, singing Love Is at the top of his lungs. And I remember thinking, damn, that's it. This is our moment. This is how we know that we've made that connection. I mean, I'm sort of joking, but not really. It was kind of strangely, it was a powerful moment.
That song, that's a great song. It's a real earworm. Like once you hear it, you can't get it out of your head for a while.
Thank you, I think.
Notice that Black Velvet was a great song, but it wasn't the best song. There's even better songs on here. So as I said, Love Is, that's a great song.
Yeah.
There's a song here called Lover of Mine.
Ah, yes.
And oh my God, Christopher, this is one of the best things I've ever heard. So it's beautiful music, and then combined with Alana's performance, like the emotion you can hear in her voice.
Her vocal on that, I mean, how many times have I heard it over the years? And it's still, when I hear it now, it kills me. I mean, she tapped into something, as you say, emotionally, like really, really deep with that song. Yeah. It was too bad that it was never a single internationally. I think it would have been quite successful.
I think it was a top 40 hit in Canada, right?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did come out in Canada, and there was a beautiful video. Did you ever see the video for it? It was shot in Ireland, and it was, I mean, just this stunningly beautiful setting. And there was a huge storm coming up too, and so she's got this coat that's flapping along behind her.
It'll come up.
Oh, okay. Well, if people are able to see that screen, I encourage them to look closely.
Now, in 1990, you won Composer of the Year, Juno Award, you and David Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that awarded for a particular song or for songwriting in general for that year?
I can't remember whether they listed which songs that it was for. I mean, it was clearly for all the songs on Alana's record. Mm-hmm. But I don't, you know what? Honestly, John, I can't remember if they named certain ones. I'm sorry. But it was, you know what? It was a fantastic honor to receive that. I mean, when you're a songwriter, that's the big award. That's the one that really, really matters.
Right.
Yeah.
So Alana Miles had 9 top 40 hits in Canada. Now, one of them was a little song called Sunny Say You Will.
Oh, yeah.
A cover song of a Christopher Ward song that came out in '81. Is that right?
Yes. This is all true. I can't deny any of it. It's funny. She always loved that song. I think in many ways that was her favorite song that I ever wrote. And so when she had a chance to record it, she did.
I haven't been able to find this song, track it down yet. But if I go online to find a record, maybe I can.
You find what, my version of it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
Oh, thanks.
No problem.
There's been other Canadian artists who are very successful in Canada and maybe only have one hit in America. So like I'm thinking of Jan Arden, very successful in Canada and just had the one hit, Insensitive in America.
Yep.
Now, what do you attribute that to? Why do you think there are artists who, even after they break it for, one hit in America, it doesn't continue, but in their native Canada, still can be successful?
Well, I guess I would sort of look at it a little differently. I would say that for everything to line up the way that it has to have a hit record of any description at any time, even once, is like a remarkable sort of confluence of factors that just are all working. You know, it's like you got to be signed to the right label. You got to have the right production on the song. You got to have a really good manager who's beating the label up constantly to make sure that they're promoting the thing. And it's timing. It's like, you know, I mean, Black Velvet was far from being a sort of prototypical single at the time. You think about what was going on in those days. It was kind of like the Quiet Riot years.
Mhm.
And I mean, Black Velvet was, you know, I mean, it's excuse me for name dropping, but this is true. Robert Plant said, he said, "Oh, Christopher, you know, Black Velvet, it's just a blues song with a chorus, man," you know, and like, oh, okay. But he's right. It's a blues song with a chorus. Go figure that that would be a #1 song. I mean, I'm obviously clearly delighted that it did.
Mhm.
But I guess what I'm saying, sort of very long answer to your basic simple question, which is like the very fact that you can have one hit is a minor miracle. Expecting to have a second or a third is virtually impossible. Yes, there are artists that do. Sure, there's U2 or Coldplay or, you know, Taylor Swift or whoever you want to name. But you think about, it's like the number of people that make it to be, you know, on the hockey all-star team. It's like there's a pyramid right before you get to the top, and there's all the others down below aspiring for that same thing. And so I feel like we were incredibly fortunate to have one hit. And, you know, for me as a writer, it's a calling card that I'll have forever. You know, I'm the guy that wrote that song, which is fantastic. Is that a very long-winded answer, but did it explain it?
Well, I mean, in the case of Lana, I mean, she did have many hits after Black Velvet, you know, in Canada.
Yes.
I'm wondering why the Canadian hits, if you have an idea of why the Canadian hits didn't translate also to American hits.
Well, I mean, Canadians are very proud of their artists, I think. And they sort of claim them as being their own. And they will, you know, support their careers through ups and downs in a way that you can't expect in America, because America's on to the next. They're on to the next new thing. I guess that's it. It's the best answer I have.
Now, is it true that you left MuchMusic to pursue being Alana's manager full-time?
No. I was already kind of managing her career. I mean, we were a couple for a long time. And, you know, I mean, it was the two of us against the world, I guess, for quite a while. She was, as you can imagine, very ambitious, intensely hardworking, extremely talented, and she just had that unique combination of ambition and talent that you need. And like, she was more focused and intense about things than I was. I mean, I was very creative and I was always writing songs. I mean, the joke was that she'd say to me every day, "You're going to write me a hit song. I know you are." And it was like, or else, right? It was kind of the feeling like, oh, okay, I'm working on it, you know. But it took that drive. I mean, those are the people that succeed, that have that, you know, boundless, burning ambition in their hearts.
Alana's not the only person you wrote for. I picked up this CD, Amanda Marshall.
Oh, Amanda, yeah.
And there you are, one of her hits, Beautiful Goodbye, another beautiful song that you wrote. You and I think David Tyson?
Yeah, Dave produced that record as well.
Yeah, so you and Dave did a lot of good work together.
Yeah, I mean, we're great friends and still to this day. And in fact, pursuant to the Alana joke, it was my birthday last week, and he sent me a message that said, "Happy birthday," or else. So it was like, the joke still continues all these years later. Yeah, I mean, you know, when you find somebody that you collaborate with, where there's a kind of an artistic understanding, it's like when you do what they don't, and vice versa. You know, you can find a sort of comfortable joining of forces, and that was the case with Dave. He's just such a gifted melody writer, and like for example with "Beautiful Goodbye," the Amanda Marshall song. Like he had that song, the whole melody and the track was completely finished when he gave it to me. And I'll be honest with you, I was intimidated by it because it was so beautiful. When he played it for me, I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna live up to this? Because it moved me so much. It took me months to write that damn song. Months to write the lyric for it. But in the end, it was worth the time spent, I think.
Good job.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to switch gears now and talk about this podcast you have going, Famous Last Words. It's a show you do with Tom Jokic. Why don't you explain to us what this podcast is?
Well, my partner Tom is the creator of the show, and he produces the morning radio show at a station called Chum FM in Toronto. And it's like, I think it's the #1 morning show in the country.
I remember when that was Roger, Rick, and Marilyn back in
Well, it's still Marilyn. Roger has retired, and so has Rick, I believe. But Marilyn is still manning it, and she's such a fantastic interviewer. She's amazing. So Tom is an archivist at heart. He just loves digging around and finding stuff. And he was in their archives there. And the archives at that station are unbelievable. And they go back to the 1950s, right? They have interviews with literally everyone from Elvis Presley to Taylor Swift and anyone in between. And he was pulling out these interviews and thinking, I bet people have never heard these. Or if they ever went to air, maybe they went to air once and were never heard again, right? And he thought there's got to be a way to make use of this material. It's too good. So he came to me with this idea, said, I want to take these interviews, pull out the best bits, and then we'll just sit and yak about it. And I went, okay, I'm in. As long as you do the archive work, because I can't do that. He's like, yeah, sure. So that's what we do. And it's really, really fun. I mean, it's two music geeks just carrying on, you know.
It's great. I listen to it all the time. It's on its 5th season now.
Yeah.
So a lot of shows. And I think it's fascinating listening to interviews from artists like before they were big. Like you have an interview, let's say with Beyonce. Now today we know she's a huge star, but when you interviewed her, she didn't know she's going to be a huge star or not, right? And so it's really fun to get this, different angle.
You know what? I agree with you. Those are the ones that are the most entertaining for me because you do see a glimpse of who they will become. And Beyonce is a great example because, I mean, talk about ambition. I mean, she's like, like I was saying about Atlanta. I mean, Beyonce, she is such a driven person. I mean, she's got such an incredible standard for her work. And even then, you hear it in what she said. Like she was laid back and funny and everything else, but you know that this was somebody to be reckoned with, somebody who was going to be around for a while and who was going to have their say. Clearly, she has. But yeah, I mean, probably the goofiest example of somebody before they're a star was the Justin Bieber one. Did you hear that one?
Yes.
Because his voice hasn't changed in it yet, right? So it's like he's going, yeah, this is really, 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 really fantastic. So we did play the really, really, really part, maybe more than once, John. When you have something like that, you got to use it, right?
So I want to switch gears into songwriting, and a lot of what I've heard you saying on Famous Lost Words brought up a lot of the questions I have here. Now, Famous Lost Words, we heard John Cougar Mellencamp Now, I guess he was performing a song in concert that he hadn't put on an album yet. And so someone came up to him and said, hey, I want to buy that song. And like, he wouldn't sell the song. And so I'm not sure how this works. Now, I thought the way cover songs work is that anyone can do a cover song without permission of the artist. I mean, they got to pay royalties and all that, but you can't stop someone from doing a cover song. Now, is it different, I guess, if it hasn't been on a record yet?
Well, you just hit the essence of it. If it hasn't been recorded yet, then you need the permission of the writer. And then, if it's already been out, you're right. Anybody can record it at any time, but they do have to get permission if they want to make any substantial changes in the song.
Now, what constitutes in today's day and age a recording? Like if you just sang it on YouTube, is that considered a recording?
Boy, you're asking all the good questions. I mean, I guess streaming is the modern day version of it. You know, I don't know how much permission people seek when they put things out on YouTube. I mean, a lot of the time, I think people just do whatever they want and wait to get caught. You know, kind of like the early sampling days, you know, when people would put a sample of a song and then eventually they get caught and they go, oh, okay, we'll give you a share of the royalties or whatever the settlement would be. I mean, sometimes they get, you know, their butt bitten by that. I mean, look at the Verve with, you know, the Rolling Stones lawsuit. And they lost all the royalties to that song, you know, Bittersweet Symphony.
Oh, really? Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, although eventually, finally, just last year, I think it actually got reversed, and now the Verve officially collect royalties. But I mean, what they actually borrowed wasn't even part of the song. It was like an orchestral version of Rolling Stones songs that had been put together years ago by their manager, Andrew Golden. Sorry if this is getting boring and arcane, but for someone who creates copyrights for a living, it's just fascinating stuff, you know?
Are you familiar with the band Negative Land, who did a song that sampled U2 and Casey Kasem swearing during outtakes?
U2 and Casey Kasem?
Yes.
Wow, that's quite a combination.
I forget the name of the song particularly. It might be just called U2, the song. It was Negative Land, and they had I still haven't found looking for samples, along with Casey Kasem during an outtake swearing at his staff. How they...
Oh, right. I've heard about the Casey Kasem thing. I've never actually heard it, but yeah, it's one of those famous studio tapes.
Right.
No, I've never heard that. So
if I want to record my own cover song, it has to be pretty accurate to the original, right?
No, you can record, I guess, what you'd call an interpretation of the song, but you can't substantially change it. In other words, if you wanted to put different lyrics to it, that you'd have to get permission for. As far as the melody goes, there's probably a little more room to move there because that could be considered an interpretive thing.
Can I leave
but the lyrics, it's more black and white. They're either the originals or they're not.
Can I leave out a verse?
Yes, I think you can probably get away with omission, but yeah.
Can I add in like an "Oh Baby"?
You're angling for something here, aren't you? Whose song are you going to cover? As long as it's not mine, I'm okay with this.
No. I'm just wondering like how strict the rules are, and because we don't necessarily want to hear karaoke versions of cover songs. Hearing, you know.
Well, you see, I don't care. Like, there's so many versions of Black Velvet out there that it's kind of. I mean, I don't listen to them. What happens actually, the way I hear them is people send them to me. They'll be like, "Oh, I can't believe I heard this." And they'll send me, there'll be some wacky version. Like I've seen, you know, there was a guy who played like Black Velvet on solo banjo. I mean, it was just, or, you know, you hear, there was this heavy metal band once called Nailworks. They're probably from Germany, where all great heavy metal is from. I remember saw the album cover too. What it had pictures of these nails, and the head of the nail was a photograph of one of the band members. It was just like the best, most obscure thing you've ever seen. But the version of the song was like, you know, that kind of barfy voice that some of the metal bands do, the Black Velvet and that, was that, right? But with the double kick drum on the kick. And I just remember listening to that thinking, who would have ever conceived of such a thing as this? I mean, in a way, you kind of have to, you know, tip your hat and go, all right, good, creative. You didn't ask my permission, but sure, you know, that's fine.
Do they use the same melody? And
wow. It's a little dodgy, that one, but yeah, I mean, I guess sort of.
so I wonder what are the elements of a song? So I guess you have the lyrics as part of the song. Now the melody, does that refer to the notes that you sing the lyrics to?
Well, you know, that's a good question, because the answer to that question is changing over time. If you go back to the, you know, the Tin Pan Alley era, the sort of the classic era of songwriting, the song was the lyric and the melody, and that was it. And, you know, if Nelson Riddle came in and arranged, you know, Night and Day by Cole Porter for Frank Sinatra, he was the arranger, and then somebody else was the producer, and Frank was the singer. But the writing, that was Cole Porter. That was the words and the music. But now, it's like the track is such a huge component of the success of a pop song that it's equally as important, if not more important at times,
So when you say
than the
track,
lyric or the melody.
you mean like the notes that the guitar plays and the keyboard plays?
The instrumentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the way that popular music is made now. It's kind of assembled, you know, like you're baking a cake and you're putting in all these ingredients one at a time, right? And a lot of times it's highly specialized work. You'll get, you know, somebody will come in and play this one little figure on this keyboard. Somebody else will come in and play a little riff on guitar. Somebody else will come in. They'll get singers to come in who will be, you know, doing hooks. And they'll literally go out into the control room and they'll ad lib for, you know, an hour or something around the melody or the track that's played in their headphones. And then the producers will go, okay, thanks, we got everything we need. And then they'll go away and they will have no idea how their work is going to be used. I mean, they'll get a credit, of course, as a co-writer based on what they did, but it's all being manipulated by, you know, pop music is producers' music nowadays for the most part. And how they use all those elements and move them around, it's a fine art, and I admire it. I can't do it, but I admire it.
If I want to do a cover song, are all the elements properly documented? Like do I have to know how to listen by ear all the notes to make sure that when I make the cover version, I'm getting it accurately? Can I get like sheet music, or am I on my own?
Have to be accurate. That's the beauty of it. You know, there's no requirement that you be accurate, except with the lyric. I don't believe you can change the lyric without permission. Whereas with the music, you know, you can do a reinterpretation of it as long as you pay the royalties. You're good to go.
Now, an exception, famously, is Weird Al Yankovic. He does all his parodies, and he always asks permission, but he also says he doesn't need to ask permission. So is there
I believe he does need to ask permission. I mean, he's pretty successful so who am I to say Weird Al is wrong? But I believe that he does need, in fact, to get that permission. But of course, the thing is that people are so flattered when Weird Al does a parody of one of their songs you know, I mean, I would love to hear him do a parody of one of my songs. So of course I would give him permission, but that hasn't happened yet.
Does that only, these rules apply only to recordings? Like if I do in a concert, if I do a song called Red Velvet, is that okay?
There is a song called Red Velvet, actually, but it's by Ian and Sylvia. You can do that, but if you're in fact trading on Black Velvet, then, you know, the copyright police would be waiting outside the stage door for you.
On Famous Lost Words, there's another great story I heard about a friend of yours who you know, called you up and said, hey Chris, I got a rod. I guess meant he wrote a song and Rod Stewart was going to record it.
Yeah.
So my first question is, how do artists and performers like Rod Stewart find songs to do? Like, how do they find your friend's song?
Well, you know what? There's no set of rules on that one. I think it's however, you know, it's like, okay, so is Rod Stewart actively, personally looking for songs? Probably not, but I'll bet he has lots of people who are happy to bring him songs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be, you know, it could be his A&R guy at his record label. And in the case of the song you're talking about Rhythm of My Heart,
Right.
the song that Mark Jordan and John Capek wrote. And Mark is my friend who was on the show as a guest talking about that. Yeah, the A&R guy for Rod Stewart had known about that song for, I think, like 7 or 8 years, always loved it, kind of kept it in a drawer, waiting for the right moment, the right artist, the right time. And that moment came along and he gave it to Rod. Rod said, I love this, I want to record it. There's a kind of a second part to that story because it was recorded, I would say like in 1990, maybe 90, 91, whenever the first Gulf War was.
Right.
And the song does have a sort of storyline about it that deals with somebody like a soldier. And so after they'd recorded and it was going to come out, it was all set to be a single and everything else. Then the Gulf War happened and then they pulled the song and they were like, oh no, we can't release this. Fortunately for Mark and for Rod, the Gulf War ended rather precipitously, as I recall, within a few days of the beginning.
Yes.
Which is good. If a war can end in 3 or 4 days, I think everybody benefits. But yeah, so the song did come out. It did become a huge hit, and Rod did a fantastic version of it. I mean, Rod Stewart, you know, he's always recorded really, really interesting, good songs. Whether it's like, you know, a Robbie Robertson song, or I can't think of all the different people he's covered, but they're not obvious covers, you know. So he probably has people kind of curating what he listens to. But maybe, you know, maybe he goes out there, or maybe his friends. It's like if you're friends with Rod, maybe you go, man, I was listening to a record and I heard this fantastic song. I just thought I should play it for you. Rod might go, yeah, wow, that is great. I bet I could do an interpretation of that. So, yeah, you never know how a song's going to get to somebody. You just hope that it does.
Now, in the case of Rhythm of Your Heart, did Rod Stewart make requests that the lyrics get changed, or did he end up just using the original lyrics as they were?
I think what happened is because of the Gulf War situation, and I'm trying to remember Mark's story, they requested changes, and Mark said that he just, you know, was kind of panicked because this was such an important career moment for him. Like, these are kind of make it or break it moments when an artist of that stature records your song. And he said he was just banging his head against the wall, trying to come up with a new lyric. And he said he never came up with anything that he thought was even slightly decent or worthy of presenting to them. I think I would have presented something no matter how good it was. But and then finally the as I say, the Gulf War ended, and what they did was they recorded the original lyric as it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the team, the Rod Stewart team, couldn't make their own changes. They needed the songwriter to make the change for them. Is that right?
Well, that was the route that they took. Yeah. And I think that happened with another one of Mark's songs that Rod recorded, where, you know, there was some lyrics that he went, yeah, I can't really sing this comfortably. And you know what? That's totally cool. I mean, when you, again, with an artist like the stature of a Rod Stewart, or even somebody unknown for that matter, every artist has their own vision. They have their own sense of, their own comfort level with what they record. And it has to sound believable coming out of their mouth, right?
Right.
I mean, I've certainly changed things for people. And, you know, some like your friends will go, oh, I can't believe you would change that. That's you know, wasn't that your art? I'm going, art, smart. I wanted to get the cover, you know? Like my attitude when somebody asks me to change it is, how soon do you need it? That's the question that I ask.
Right.
And, you know, I probably sound like a sellout, but it's more that, you know, when you work with an artist, you want them to feel comfortable and at home singing whatever it is you've written for them. So, and a song is a song, you know, why not change it? I'm not precious about those things.
Now, as a songwriter, do you get paid every time the song is on the radio or every time someone plays it on Spotify?
In theory. Well, it's like, you know, well, let's say radio play, which is, you know, emblematic of other ways of people hearing music. I think there's some means of keeping track of what gets played on the radio, and the information is gathered up and shared with the performing rights societies like ASCAP and BMI. And then they determine what one airplay is worth, and then how many airplays. They'll extrapolate from a sample of how many airplays you would get with something, and you get paid accordingly.
Now, I guess today must be harder because 20 years ago you had like album sales, which don't seem to exist too much today. And that was probably a big part of a songwriter's income, right?
Yeah, because, you know, I mean, streaming services are starting to make up some of the lost revenue, but not completely. I don't know if they will ever pay at the same rate that album sales did. You just have to find other ways of monetizing your work, which again, you know, sort of speaks in favor of not being precious about something. If it's an opportunity and you want to make some dough, then you got to go for it. I mean, so for example, for me, one of my biggest sources of revenue is what they call syncs, S-Y-N-C-H, which is short for synchronization, which is a very, very old music business term referring to when music and picture are synced together.
Okay.
So, you know, whether it's like a television show or a film usage or something like that, in some cases a commercial, you know, your publisher will come to you and say, so here, I have this opportunity, you have to decide whether you want to go for it or not. But it's a real legitimate source of revenue. Now,
I guess when MuchMusic played videos, they wouldn't have to pay sync, would they? Because there's more of a benefit to the artists.
You know, that was an interesting story, because at the outset, I don't think the video channels paid anything. Their attitude was like, well, hey, we're promoting your artists. You know, we're helping you sell millions of records. Why in God's name should we pay? But I think after a certain point, I don't know how it was resolved legally, but there came a point where, you know, MuchMusic and MTV and any video service had to pay for the ability to use the music in a video.
Mm. Is there a point in time when copyrights expire and songs go in the public domain?
Yes. Well, that's the exact term, is public domain.
Mm.
So, for example, I don't know, just like take a song that's like 100 years old, you know,
It's 100 years, the amount of time it takes for a.
It's, you know, it's different in every country. I think in America, it's 75 years after the death of the composer.
Oh.
So,
So
you
none
know,
of the
this,
music we've listened to in the last 100 years would be up for a while.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of it. I can't think of a really good example. And Coming Round the Mountain When She Comes. I mean, maybe that song is in public domain now. You know, Happy Birthday. Well, actually, it's funny. I think Happy Birthday was the example where everybody assumed Happy Birthday was in public domain.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, on a practical level, people who are singing Happy Birthday at somebody's birthday are not likely to have to pay royalties to do so.
Right.
Yeah, practically, that's just not going to happen. But I think actually Happy Birthday, there still is ownership of the copyright. So
I remember it became an issue like starting in the 80s, I think, where restaurants could no longer sing Happy Birthday to like customers for their birthday. So they made up like weird fake birthday songs. And I think in the last, 5 or 10 years, a judge finally ruled, no, Happy Birthday, you were unable to prove your copyright, and now it's back in the public again.
Oh, what about Baba Black Sheep and, Twinkle Twinkle? I mean.
Oh man, I don't know.
Ah,
Do you have a favorite song that you have written?
oh, huh. I have a few that I'm particularly proud of. I mean, Beautiful Goodbye. Maybe because it was so hard to write, but I was really happy with the end result. Like I figure it really captured, a mood. But then I've written songs that very few people have heard that are some of my absolute favorites. I was writing songs for a television show called Instant Star,
Mm-hmm.
which is produced by the same people that produced Degrassi. And Instant Star was really fun because it was based on the story of a young artist. And at the outset of the series, she wins a sort of, American Idol type of competition. But then it's like, well, now what? What happens with her life and her career and all the battles that she has to go through subsequent to winning the big competition? So each episode had a featured song, and it had to reflect the theme of that particular episode. So that was a really interesting creative challenge. And I think I wrote some of the best music I've ever written for that show. But, maybe if you saw the show, you heard the song, and that might be it, right?
Are those songs available somewhere for people to listen to now?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube has all of it. The artist's name is Alex with a Z on the end, Johnson. She had a career of sorts. I don't know how much success she's had. She's a fantastic singer, very gifted singer.
What's a song of hers that we should check out?
My favorite, which I wrote, of course, is called 2 a.m. So 2 a.m. by Alex Johnson, yeah. Or you could Google Instant Star. I'm sure because they did full videos for these songs. So, there's a whole performance that you can see.
So let me ask you, what are you doing now?
I'm drinking a glass of water in my vineyard in Alsace. Well, like I mentioned to you, I am going to make an album. I've had this really incredible creative outburst as a songwriter within the last year or so. And I just decided that I needed to do it. I had these songs in me, and I was really happy with them, proud of them. And although it's not the coolest thing in the world to do to make a record, I don't really care. I've got a bunch of fantastic musicians and a wonderful recording studio I'm working in called the Orange Lounge. Have you heard of it?
I've not heard of that one, no.
Yeah, the reason I asked is they had a series called Live from the Orange Lounge, and they had everybody on there, like Katy Perry, Drake, and everyone was on that show. And it's just a beautiful recording studio. And so we're just going to go in and cut it live off the floor. And so that's my big creative, passionate pursuit right now.
I hope you
And
make sure it's on Spotify and iTunes and all the rest.
I will endeavor to make sure. But thank you for reminding me, John.
So where can our viewers go to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Well, I have a website, christopherward.ca, which is Canada, not California. So yeah, I mean, you can look me up. I'm there.
If anybody Googles you, you are a very famous watch, a timepiece.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, I'm a timepiece. Oh well, there's worse things, right, than being a timepiece.
I guess so. Well, that's all I have. I want to thank
Wow.
you so much for being on the show. This was great.
It was my pleasure.
I remember you from.
Thank you for the time that you spent, doing research and really thinking about the direction of the interview. They were great questions, John. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. See you next time.
All right.